Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'm here with the special guest of YongYea, where we're going to talk about loot crates and whether or not there's any way they can work in the AAA gaming industry or if they are going to negatively impact the industry forever. YongYea, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, how's it going, everybody? It's Yong here, and welcome to a very special podcast. I'm really happy to be here joining you, and I'm really excited to talk about this really just dreadful subject, and have a discourse and conversation about it. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, and thank you for joining us. I'm pretty sure that anyone that's been following the game industry or news in general and has seen any of the controversy involving any loot boxes, but especially Star Wars Battlefront 2, without a doubt has probably seen YongYea's videos, as they have all been trending involving Star Wars Battlefront 2. My feed has been blowing up with YongYea's videos.
Yeah, it's been a lot, and I partly feel bad because it's been like at one point it was like literally 10 videos straight, just all Battlefront 2. But I don't know, I had a way between ignoring the subject just for the sake of lightening the mood, or just hammering this because it needs to be hammered, and I chose hammering the shit out of it until EA gets it together and improves themselves, because this is just not acceptable the way they've been handling themselves, in my opinion, at least.
Yep, no, I agree. EA has, and as you guys might have seen from my videos, I personally like Star Wars Battlefront 2 in terms of the gameplay. I think it's a phenomenal game. DICE did a really great job on the multiplayer, but EA's part in terms of the loot boxes and the progression system is, well, shit, basically.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. The base game itself is, it looks gorgeous, it plays fine, and it's very authentic, and I think a lot of passion has clearly been put into it by a lot of talented people, but the corporate aspect of it is what ruined it. You know, it's EA appealing to the investors with just these greedy schemes, and as Andrew Wilson, was it the CFO who said uncapped monetization? That's literally the term that they used for.
Yeah, I think it was the CFO.
Yeah, I think it was the CFO, Jurgensen or something. And that about represents everything wrong with EA. It's not just about monetization; it's about uncapped monetization. It's not about let's make the money back. It's about let's make all the money in the world. And when that overtakes the creative aspect, when that becomes the priority over player experience, over just doing the right thing, that's when people get pissed. That's when gamers like myself get riled up and start making 10 videos per week about the subject.
Yeah, I think for me personally, the point that I saw this was really getting out of hand is when you published your video about how Take-Two Interactive has now vowed that each and every one of their games going forward will have microtransactions in it. So that means even in Borderlands 3,
Yep.
we might see loot, which in Borderlands, loot was easy to get, it was fun to get, and there was a ton of it.
And it was designed, or like the game was designed in a way that the loot was properly integrated in it wasn't like this other thing that you can purchase. It was just like a part of the game. It's part of the game design. The idea of getting loot was one of the fun things about Borderlands, because they implemented it in such a seamless way. But now I don't know what's going to happen with Take-Two making that vow. Borderlands 3 will surely have loot boxes now that Take-Two has taken that stance, and it's a damn shame, because it's just going to ruin one of the great parts about that game.
Yeah, I know for me personally too, like I loved GTA 4 for me was a good game, but I loved the DLC with it. The Ballad of Gay Tony was a phenomenal expansion. That's what got me to really go back into the game and dive into it. Red Dead Redemption, Undead Nightmare, one of my favorite DLCs of all time. I played that DLC 3 times or so. So my worry now is that there's like a little picture online somewhere someone made where it makes fun of Rockstar, saying the year that Rockstar found out microtransactions, because they released a game every year, and then after 2013, nothing until Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out. And my worry now is will Red Dead Redemption 2 suffer the same fate, where in Red Dead Redemption 2, we're going to have no DLC and maybe even have, you know, some kind of loot box tied to single player is my biggest worry.
I don't know if it'll have loot boxes tied to it because...
or some kind of microtransaction.
Yeah, it'll definitely have microtransactions and something akin to shark cards. But it's possible because, you know, all the publishers have been pushing the boundary just a little bit more every time. You know, it starts with just microtransactions, and then it became microtransactions with loot boxes. And then now it's becoming... matchmaking that revolves around the selling of microtransactions that's been patented by Activision. So there's a natural progression to all this, and you know, one has to wonder if Red Dead Redemption 2 will be part of that progression, and now suddenly have loot boxes because they've been so lucrative for EA and they've made a ton of money from it. Yeah,
I feel like EA and Activision in general are definitely leading the charge into the worst scenarios with loot boxes. And we've always kind of thought of, you know, CD Projekt Red and Rockstar as like our two saviors, and, you know, companies like Bethesda. Bethesda's had their own fair share of controversy this year.
Sure.
And then, you know, now Rockstar, one of the other two, you know, great ones that are left, might also take that same path, which is, I guess, very worrisome.
Yeah. It's a shame because, you know, Rockstar makes, I mean, phenomenal world-class games. Of that, there's no denying. But with Take-Two taking this stance, and you know, Red Dead Redemption 2 looks so amazing. I mean, I'm genuinely just ecstatic about this game. The trailers look incredible, and I mean, I don't know. For me, for that game, you know, I never really was into the whole GTA Online ecosystem. I was just fine playing the single player and finishing that. If they can keep the microtransactions and loot boxes away from my single player experience, and if they, you know, obviously if the single player turns out to be awesome, which I have no doubt it will be, then I think I'll be satisfied. But, you know, that doesn't mean I'll necessarily be okay with them exploiting microtransactions and multiplayer either. But it depends on the person and what they're looking for in a game. For me, the single player is all I care about. But for the people who care about multiplayer, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree. The multiplayer for me, I enjoy the multiplayer aspect of it, and I don't care if they have microtransactions in a sense in multiplayer, but a lot of people complain about how it was in GTA Online, you really had to purchase the shark cards to keep up, and you had to purchase those cards to buy or higher up weapons, which did do significantly more damage and they impeded gameplay. And I know for me, the biggest worry too is, you know, they didn't make any single player DLC with Grand Theft Auto 5 when they had originally said they're going to make a zombie DLC and stuff.
Yeah, because it's just cheaper to implement microtransactions and call it a day. You know, making a DLC, you have to spend some resources and you don't know if it's going to sell well or not. And for GTA 4, the DLCs, I believe they didn't sell quite as well as they would have wanted to. I think it sold fine, but it wasn't like a big... You know, it just, I don't know what the exact sales figures were, but from what I've heard, obviously it didn't bring in the amount of money that just the simple implementation of microtransactions in GTA Online did. They spend less and win more with microtransactions. So from a business standpoint, they really have no reason to do DLC. But that for me, I hate it when, you know, they make it about just what's good for business instead of where can we find that balance. Why can't they do microtransactions and give players a DLC, even if it means spending resources? Like, they have the resources. They made so much money. Why can't they use some of that, you know, spend some of it and sacrifice some of it to, you know, appease the loyal fan base that they've had for all these years instead of fucking them over?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't like the direction or the ideas that I think 2K is currently taking. And I know they had released statistics at some point. I know EA already had their quarterly earnings call, and they had some bar graph that showed, you know, the total money they made from all their games sold. And then they showed the amount of money they made from microtransactions, and it was like 4 times the size of the... And I know the biggest contributor is FIFA.
Oh, so by far.
I feel like we're never going to be able to get anywhere with bringing those away until FIFA players stop buying those gold packs.
Yep.
And their
for Ultimate Team or whatever it's called.
Yep, the Ultimate Team is a huge thing for them.
Yeah, I personally never understood the appeal. It's like a bit like trading cards, but I don't.
But very expensive cards.
That is correct. So I don't find the appeal in them, but obviously football, not American football, the real football, the one where you use your foot to kick the ball, is a worldwide. It is the world sport. It's except for a couple countries, it's the main sport in almost every country in the world. So yeah, the appeal of FIFA is massive, and EA is sort of exploiting that appeal with Ultimate Player, and that's where most of their profit comes from. And it's I don't know, they're relying on very few legs to stand upon, and I feel like one of these days that bubble's gonna burst. EA, once FIFA gets, I don't know, regulated or something, I don't know. Just if FIFA doesn't turn out to yield the profits that they're foreseeing in the future, then that's it. That's the one leg that EA is just basing their entire business model around. So it's a risky thing that EA is doing, placing all the eggs in one basket, if you will. So yeah, like you said, if FIFA players stop buying the Ultimate Team stuff, the cards and whatnot, that right there would send a very strong message to EA. But until then, they're going to keep doing whatever the hell they want, unless government actually gets involved like they've been doing recently and actually pass some regulation or legislation. So, yeah.
So now I want to take a couple steps back here with the questionnaire. We're going to go back to an interesting question. I want to kind of build up to where we're at today.
Yeah.
Before we reach our final conclusion of if microtransaction boxes can ever really work.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question is, when was the first time you experienced microtransactions, and what were your thoughts on them at the time?
I don't know what the first game ever to implement microtransactions was.
Oh, no, just for you
but
personally.
But the one that I remember, I believe was, when I first started hearing about the debacle, was Assassin's Creed 3, which had a multiplayer component that featured microtransactions where you could purchase items to speed up your progress and all that crap that the publishers will tell you about why it's excusable to include this stuff. And yeah, I remember that there was outrage against that. But, back then, microtransactions were mainly confined to multiplayer, and I didn't really care much for the multiplayer component, so I didn't really pay much attention to it. And, compared to what we have today, it was actually fairly innocent, which is weird to say that I almost miss those days compared to what we have now. And another game that I remember that implemented, I think it was loot boxes pretty much, was Mass Effect 3. That game had a multiplayer component.
Yeah, that was actually my first one personally.
Yeah, that had a multiplayer component, and it straight up had what were essentially loot boxes, right? You could purchase premium currency, was it, in that game?
Yeah, I played a lot of Mass Effect 3's multiplayer. I think I put in like 400 hours. For me, that was the first one I saw personally, and it was, it's true, it was a grind. You had to win a gold match and basically get all the objectives as fast as possible, just so you could purchase, I don't remember now if it was you could purchase only one or not even a full one of the best crates you could get. So that one was very, very incentivized that you could get it much quicker if you paid, $1.99. You could get that premium box right then and there. And I know for me personally, I played that a lot, and so did a lot of other players too. That was actually a really popular game mode in Mass Effect 3 because there's a lot of customization options and a lot of characters and weapons that were all locked behind those crates, and it was all randomized. It was RNG.
Yeah,
and it wasn't like only cosmetic based. It was entirely new characters. It was level 5 weapons, level 10 weapons. Yeah, it was a whole 9
yards from what I've seen.
Yeah,
and the game obviously was published by EA, and Andrew Wilson was still, I believe Andrew Wilson was leading the charge at the time, as he is now, and he's one of the main driving forces behind the EA style of pay-to-win loot boxes. And, I don't know if I'd go as far as calling Mass Effect 3 loot boxes pay-to-win, but if you pay, you would certainly progress a lot faster and have some substantial advantages, much like, Battlefront 2. But at the same time, the Mass Effect 3's progression system, I don't know, would you say it revolved around the loot boxes like they do in Battlefront 2?
In a sense, yeah, you needed to get the items in the loot boxes to progress more. You could still level up your characters and you could still upgrade your characters without them. But if you wanted new characters and new weapons and new attachments, you could only get those from the crates.
Wow.
Of course, I found a way to get around that, which was cheating, and they never truly patched it out, which is you could get one character and you could glitch him out and get unlimited missiles and just blaze through missions in 5 minutes. That's what I did.
Oh, okay.
But yes, it was really much made to, they want to make sure at all costs you're going to purchase these crates to upgrade yourself faster.
Wow. Yeah, well, in that case, yeah, the Battlefront 2 style of loot boxes is really nothing new.
Except back then it was only against AI bots, now it's against real people.
Yeah, that's the big difference. In Mass Effect 3, it was very much co-op based. It was, in fact, only co-op based. I don't think there was any... was there any competitive? Like, you shoot each other? Yeah, it was only co-op. In Battlefront 2, you're now pitting people against each other. It's not a cooperative experience. It's a competitive experience. And in Battlefront 2, a level playing field is, pivotal. And you don't have that with... when you tie the entire progression system around loot boxes that you can then pay for to get these star cards and all that. At least Mass Effect 3 had that going for it. You didn't really need a playing or a level playing field because it was cooperative. There was no ranked, system. Was there a ranked system?
No ranking system.
Right.
You had a character level, but it's like I said, like you said, it's only co-op, so it didn't have any implement on gameplay.
Right. So for Mass Effect 3, it was very casual, right? I mean, you just kind of played for fun, got together with some friends, and there was no real competition aside from, I think you could try to score the most points or something.
Yeah, there's nothing else besides that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was pretty egregious back then, but the type of game that it was allowed it to slip under the radar. But Battlefront 2, it being a Star Wars game, which appeals to kids, young people, adults, everyone. With it being Star Wars, one of the most popular franchises in the world, or the most popular franchise in the world, and with it being competitive multiplayer, yeah, that's when it really blew up. And hey, it took us however many years to get here. But people finally saw it for what it is. So
yeah, I think Battlefront 2 is probably a perfect segue into the next question, which I'm pretty sure I know your answer to. And I'm pretty sure most of the internet already has their answer made up too. But I still want to hear just in case it's something new. And that is, what's the worst version of microtransactions that you've seen implemented so far?
Let me think about that one. Star Wars Battlefront 2.
What a surprise.
No, yeah, this is definitely the worst it's ever been. It's the most egregious, it's the most predatory, the most exploitative, the most, gamble to win that it's ever been. And, the concept of what Battlefront 2 is doing is nothing new. We've seen it on mobile games and apps and all that. But where Battlefront 2 really kind of takes the limelight is in that it's a premium AAA title that they're charging $60 for from the get-go. And then from there, like, at least with other titles that are free to play, you can kind of gauge for yourself, download the game, try it out. If you don't like the way it works, you can say, nah, it's not for me. I don't like the way this works. But with Battlefront 2, you're asking for an initial fee to test the game to see if the gambling aspect is something that you can get past as you play through the game. And it's just, I don't know, kind of mind-boggling that we've gotten to this point, to be frank. What about you? What would you agree with Battlefront 2, or do you have another game in mind?
I think a good portion of it would be, I agree with you on Battlefront 2, definitely. I'm going to go and tell everyone here right now, I don't hate Battlefront 2 to the extent that I guess a lot of the general consensus and the general public seems to. Because I think the multiplayer is phenomenal and I have a great time playing with my friends every night. And I'll say the star cards for the infantry classes and the trooper classes, yes, there's a couple that are really powerful. But overall, there's none that are game breaking. Like the highest you can upgrade them is you might have 20% more health regeneration. You don't get more health or more damage or something like that. So I think the trooper cards are okay. I've never been killed in the game and been like, oh man, I only lost because of that guy's star cards. In fact, the weapon I have right now, everyone that plays the game knows the blurg. It's a 1 to 2 hit kill on every other person. My KD in the game is like 13 because of that gun. But I will say the star cards make the biggest difference for the heroes, where it's a massive difference. Like you get, 40% more blast radius, 40% more health recharge rate and stuff. And now when you use your force pull, you instantly kill them. And then for the starfighters, for the space battles, that's where it's the biggest difference of all, because then you can have 30% more, turn radius, 30% more fire rate. Like there, the differences are monumental. And I have specifically avoided that game mode for the most part, because anyone that did pay for the star cards before they took them away, they are the most powerful things out there, and they will win every battle against you, no matter how good you are.
Yeah, I mean, even if, for me, it's not even about like the gameplay ramifications. For me, it's about the intentions behind this progression system. It's about EA for me, not necessarily the game even. It's about their mindset of, again, uncapped monetization. That takes priority over everything else. And yeah, like, even, if you dive into the game, you can find any number of things to say like, this actually isn't that bad and this and that. But just for me, it's about the principle of it. It's because not everyone will necessarily know what's good and what's bad, and which star cards are better than others, which affect which game modes. So they'll just purchase loot boxes just because they want to get what they perceive to be the best things. So even if, like you said, for the trooper stuff, you said there's just not that, in your experience, the star cards really don't add as much extra advantages as some people have been.
Yeah, and now granted, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I think I'm a much better player than the average person for shooters. I've played shooters my entire life. There'd be Halo, Call of Duty, Battlefield, and now Battlefront. Gotcha. And to me, Battlefront's the easiest one yet, because it's definitely very much built for a casual player.
Yeah.
So for someone that's experienced like me, I can get headshots and stuff with the most simplest of guns and have a huge KD. But I think that definitely affects my opinion, as in I don't feel like it's a big of a difference because I have the best weapons and I'm able to be very precise. But I'm guessing for a casual player who's not very precise, doesn't have the best stuff, and is just not very good at shooting games, they might get killed very often. And when they get killed by someone, they see, they have 3 legendary cards. Yeah. Then they're going to get pretty upset about that. Yeah,
and that's exactly right. For the hardcore players, some people can look past certain things, but this game was predicted to sell like 14 million units or something. And that's a combination of both, the hardcore gamers and people who just like Star Wars. And I'm sure a lot of kids will ask for this game, and they might not necessarily be as good, but see these star cards and look at how they grant certain boosts, and they might not necessarily know how effective they are or aren't for certain modes. And there's still that incentive of purchasing them with real money, because progression in this game is, it's slow as hell from what I've heard. In terms of the credits that you earn, the fact that even if you get MVP of the match, you earn like 10, 15, 20 at most points extra or credits more than the guy who didn't do shit. And it's all built around this this idea of uncapped monetization, of milking as much money as possible. And it's that to me that really breaks this game. I'm sure you could look past it on some level for some people. And, a lot of people have bought this game, and I know some people do enjoy it, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I'll admit now I enjoy it, but I'm not encouraging the microtransactions in any means. But I do. Well, I like to say it is, I like to say that the the base game, the good parts of it, that's all DICE. Like, you can see the talent and the passion from the developers. You can see they really put all their effort in to make a phenomenal Star Wars game.
Yeah.
But then you see the loot boxes, and you say, oh, okay, here's the separation between DICE and EA. And also, when you were talking about the little kids playing it, that got me thinking, that's true. Whenever I'm killing all those players, like my KD the last game today was like 41-3. Whenever I kill someone, they're probably going to say, oh, he's only winning because he has all legendary cards. So I should buy some.
That's why they show what cards players have. Like that's the future of microtransactions. That's why they're now pushing Activision in particular with their patent. They're pushing towards matchmaking that will pair a novice player with an expert player, and then after the match is over, the novice player can look at what the expert player has, and that'll make him jealous and want to emulate the expert player and say, maybe if I get those items, I'll be as good as that guy. And then, according to the patent, if you purchase the items, the game will then put you in a game session where whatever you purchased is really advantageous. It's really good for that map or for that game mode. And then in that scenario, you might be the expert player, and then some other dude might be the novice player, and then that vicious cycle repeats itself, and then they're going to purchase your items, and then they're going to be put in a, and it just keeps going like that. That's sort of the patent that I saw for Activision. And it's that level of exploitation that I have a problem with, not necessarily with the little nuances of the game mechanics. And it's the whole idea behind it. It's so devious. It's I don't know. It just, God, it pisses me off just talking about it. But with the recent backlash, I think they got sent a pretty strong message.
Yeah, I know personally. This was I saw it on the news. My parents watched CNN, MSNBC, and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And even on all the news channels, and even like the Wall Street Journal, this news of the fan backlash to Battlefront 2's loot boxes made it on the worldwide news. It was a big issue. Everyone knew about it.
Yeah, I know people who aren't gamers who know about it. Like, people who don't really follow game news all that much are suddenly coming to me and saying, hey, have you heard about the Star Wars game? Something happened there with gambling and all that? And I'm like, oh, let me tell you all about it, buddy. And I'll sit them down and... yeah.
And you tell them I'm one of the reasons for that.
But yeah, no, truly, this has been, I'd say, the biggest backlash against the loot boxes in gaming history. It's never garnered this level of media attention, and I think in large part it has to do with the fact that it's Star Wars. EA fucked the worst franchise they could have possibly fucked. By implementing loot boxes in a Star Wars game. It's Star Wars, you can't, especially with The Last Jedi coming out, people are keeping their eyes peeled on all things Star Wars. So for them to do that, to be so egregious about the way they're exploiting or trying to exploit players in a Star Wars game a month before this new movie comes out, and Disney was pissed, by the way. I don't know if you've heard. But
yeah, what all did Disney? I've read some of the articles and I watched your video briefly while I was in class. I had it on my earbuds. But what exactly did Disney do now to talk to EA or kind of calm them down?
We don't know what's happening now behind the scenes, but there've been reports that Disney called up Andrew Wilson, the CEO of EA, to express their displeasure with the way they've been handling Battlefront 2 and the media coverage, the backlash. They are tainting the Star Wars name with this debacle. This is the golden goose. Very true. You know what I mean? Like, this is Disney's biggest franchise ever. Star Wars. It's Star Wars. And, the Disney overlords they were pissed when they saw that their star player was getting shit on by the gamers, and not just gamers, I guess, this time, also just the general audience even knew about this. So it was bad. And Disney CEO apparently was pretty upset and had someone else call Andrew and tell him, hey, man, just fix this. That's not to say that Disney isn't complacent, because to say that Disney had no idea about the loot boxes would be... Disney knew. It's just when things got bad and EA didn't handle the PR well, that's when they're like, hey, we gotta work. We care about the reputation of Star Wars. We gotta do something about this. Disable the microtransactions for now. And there are even rumors that this is rumors. I don't know if this is true, but apparently Disney might even be threatening the exclusivity rights that EA has.
Yeah, I heard that too. They might take away Star Wars from EA from this.
And don't take my word for it on that one. That's just entirely rumors. I mean, a contract is a contract. I don't know if, I don't know. There's stuff in the contract that I don't know about, so I couldn't tell you I couldn't tell you about the logistics behind that. But I hope Disney at least considers expanding their horizons, because EA, so far with every Star Wars game, they've kind of botched it on some level. Battlefront 1, it's been kind of botched with the way they handled the season pass, the DLCs and all that. The way they shipped a barren game, and then they added on top of that, but also charged people like pretty ludicrous prices. And then with Battlefront 2, it's a whole loot boxes debacle. And now with Visceral, they shut down that studio when they were making their really cool sounding single player Uncharted style action adventure Star Wars game, and now they're making it in their own image. They're making it into a games as services type of thing. And then so it's just everything. Like when EA touches Star Wars, it just, nothing good seems to happen. And I hope Disney catches on to that. I feel like it's been a repeated pattern, and they should consider expanding to more reputable game publishers and developers to bring a good name to Star Wars games for once.
Yeah, it actually amazes me too. I'm going to butt in real quick just about EA that I mean, they have the whole rights to making Star Wars games in their hand. I think it's for 10 years maybe. I don't know for sure. But there's so many cool, off-branch, mini side stories they could use in the Star Wars universe and do really cool things.
Yeah.
There was some concept art of a project even where it had this really cool imagery that I know for me personally I liked a lot, where it showed a bunch of rebels getting out of, ships on a beach, and there's rain and storming everywhere. Mm-hmm. And as the gate opened up for the rebel ships, they walk out into the rain, and, there's thousands of rebels charging up the beach. And there's, a bunch of AT-ATs firing down on them, and there's Star Destroyers firing down and ships crashing in the background. It gave off kind of like, a Star Wars D-Day.
Wow.
But a lot bigger than that.
That's really cool.
So, they could do cool stuff like that. And, there's so much potential to have, a Star Wars open world game where you explore places all over the galaxy. So, I feel like they're taking such a simplistic route in how they're handling it. They're doing the bare minimum.
I think for the Visceral one, they might go open world, Star Wars, bombastic.
But that's canceled now, isn't it?
No, the single player, it's not canceled. They closed down Visceral, and then EA took over this Star Wars project. And it was originally supposed to be like an Uncharted style Star Wars game. Now, I don't know how the exact words that they used, but they took that project, and it's no longer a single player experience. It's now something else that they described basically along the lines of turning this into a games as services, something people will be able to play for a very long time. So it sounds like they're kind of going with the Destiny route, if you will, with this. So I get the sense that it is going to be that type of open world experience, but also they're obviously going to implement loot boxes and microtransactions and all that, and find a way to turn this into a service instead of just a game.
Yeah, I think we probably handled that subject pretty well. We can definitely agree on Battlefront 2 probably being the worst version of loot boxes yet. So with that, let me find.
Yeah,
has there been any kind of form of microtransactions that you've been this is fun. I don't mind this.
Well, for that, I don't know if I've ever. Well, actually, Well, I'll first start by saying, I will say this: when I first got Overwatch, I played it quite a bit, and not once throughout the whole experience did I feel. I didn't feel like it was trying to trick me or anything into buying loot boxes. It was just, I found that I could easily ignore them. And I play the game and it was fine. So, that's not to say that Overwatch, I'm perfectly okay with everything that they're doing, because you can still technically gamble for cosmetic rewards if you care about that kind of thing. Fortunately, I don't. But it's not as if their progression system revolves around the loot boxes, or anything in the loot boxes affects gameplay. And so it's much less egregious. It's much more ignorable. And that's what I found when I played through the whole, I've played I think 40 hours of it. I just ignored it, and the game was perfectly serviceable. So I'm not okay with it, but I'm also not insulted by it in the way that Battlefront 2 is. I'm still fine with playing Overwatch, as long as they don't push that boundary further down the line. And for any microtransactions practices where I thought, yeah, this is how you do it, I'd say Warframe is a great example.
Yeah, Warframe's come up a lot recently with the way Destiny 2... I know a lot of Destiny 2 players and a lot of my subscribers who play Destiny a lot have all been saying, Warframe is actually a better version almost right now of Destiny.
Yeah. It's got so much content, and it's a game that's been developing since its inception many, many years ago. And, they didn't release a Warframe 2 and then make that into a separate experience. It's just one game that they're just adding just a bunch of shit on top with every update. And it's free to play. That's kind of one of the main points is it's a game that you can download right here, right now, and play it in its entirety at no extra cost. Now, there is microtransactions in that game, but most of it is cosmetics. I know there's one or two things that has some gameplay influence, but I've also heard that the game's actually very generous with awarding some of the premium currency required to purchase the microtransactions elements. You can use microtransactions to purchase the currency to buy some of this stuff, but the game also rewards you with the currency at a generous pace. So it's just when you buy microtransactions for Warframe, from what I hear, it feels like you're more deliberately supporting the developer as well as getting something extra out of it, rather than being forced into it. You know what I mean? It feels like you want to do this to say, hey, we appreciate this game, we love this game, here's some money, as a way of showing that I really love this game, and also I get, whatever, a cosmetic or an item in return. That's the relationship that Warframe seems to have developed. Whereas with Battlefront 2, it's more of EA's clearly trying to find every way possible to trick me or manipulate me or force me into purchasing these, because the game just progresses so slowly after a while. So that's the main difference, I think, between the two models. And the fact that Warframe's free to play and Battlefront 2 isn't, that by itself makes a huge difference. There's no price of admission to test Warframe and see if you like it, if you like what they're doing with it. And most people do think what they're doing is acceptable, because they do have to make some money, So I accept that they need microtransactions in Warframe. But for EA, they have a franchise like Star Wars, they're already charging $60. They're gonna make a shit ton of money out of it anyway. And for them to come out and say, oh yeah, we need microtransactions because games are so expensive and we need to make money to survive. But for EA, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, just recently, EA told investors that the Battlefront 2 fiasco is likely to not have any effect on long-term revenue, mainly because of FIFA and the amount of money that brings. So for Warframe, it is actually about surviving. You know what I mean? They actually need to make money because it's free to play, and for them to make these updates and to pay the people working on this game, they need the microtransactions. They can actually say, this is what we need to continue developing this game. EA has no right to say that. They just don't.
Plus if Warframe's such a good game too, I've played it only a couple hours, but I've really enjoyed the gameplay from what I've played so far, and the graphics are really fun. And I know that I play on Xbox mostly, but they just released on Xbox I know PC's had it for a while, but for Xbox they just released the open world expansion, which is pretty cool that the free to play game like Warframe is actually open world. So if I play that game and I say I like it a lot, and I've played, 20, 30 hours, I haven't spent a penny, I might say, okay, I like what the developer has done here. I enjoyed this game.
Yep.
I'll spend $5, $10 to help support them now.
Exactly. It's that I'm willing to do this for you type of mentality that makes Warframe so appealing, and such a beacon of light in terms of a good way to implement microtransactions in a way that's not predatory, because there's no loot boxes in that game. It's just you get what you purchase. You know what I mean? Like you know what you're getting out of spending money. You're not gambling for anything. It's not predatory. It's not exploitative. You're just shelling out money to say, here's a bit of support, and oh, cool, a little cosmetic in return. It's such a simple relationship. Battlefront 2, on the other hand, just such a complicated system, and just so much, there's so much hidden intention behind Battlefront 2 that it makes it hard for me to dive in there and pretend like, or think that I'm not being manipulated or being dragged along somehow. It's just that mentality that makes me feel icky about playing Battlefront 2 or something like Warframe. I feel safe playing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand entirely.
So I don't know. That's my outlook on that. Yeah. So I'd say Warframe is a perfect example of how to do it right, unless they fuck up later on and change it in a way that's terrible. But I don't think that will happen from what I've seen.
Let's hope not. Let's hope EA doesn't get a hold of Warframe.
Oh God.
Which actually, that's a perfect segment now, since talking about Warframe, to head into our very last question, because Warframe is an indie game. It's not a AAA game. So that leads into our last question, which is, let me pull it up. Can microtransactions ever work in the AAA gaming environment?
There's no reason why AAA games can't be free to play. So that's one aspect, that's one way they could have done it. I think if Battlefront 2 would have come out as a free-to-play game with microtransactions, people would have been much more okay with it. They would have been more okay with going through the grind because, they're playing it for free. Although with Warframe, I hear that you don't have to grind to, it's not a grindy progression system for the sake of being grindy to encourage microtransactions purchases. It's a game, and then the loot boxes the microtransactions. There's no loot boxes in Warframe. The microtransactions it's this side thing that you can partake in if you want. With Battlefront 2, that's not the case. It's much more predatory, but it would have been more tolerable if the game had shipped free to play. So there's that avenue to explore. If you're going to include egregious forms of microtransactions, if you're going to revolve the entire thing around, if you're going to use a free-to-play model, you know what I mean? Like, they're literally using the smartphone free-to-play model. If you're going to use that model, make it free-to-play. Don't add the $60 on top of that. That's one step that the AAA gaming industry could take. Another way they could do it is... I don't know, I guess Assassin's Creed Origins had one of the less egregious forms of microtransactions, although it technically had a way of indirectly purchasing loot boxes, where you can purchase the currency, the in-game currency, and then use that to purchase the heck of chests or whatever. But the reason it bothers me when a AAA game implements this is because out of all the developers, they're the ones who need it less. They're the ones, for Warframe, they're by themselves, they're on their own, and they have to make money. Assassin's Creed, you got Ubisoft. I mean, these guys have so much money. And for them to come out and say, oh, games are so expensive, and we gotta survive, we gotta, a guy's gotta eat. It's like, come the fuck on. Like, that's such bullshit. You guys are... Ubisoft and EA and Activision and Take-Two, they're swimming in money. So for them to play that card, it kind of just pisses me off for them to play the I'm poor card. They're not. They have of all, they're not indie. They have no excuse for implementing the most egregious forms of these practices. But I guess if they can find a balance, some balance where the microtransactions are there, but the player can ignore them outright, like Overwatch, I'd be okay with it. Not necessarily, or I don't know if okay is the right word, but rather I could ignore it. So yeah, there are avenues to do it. It's just, I'd say Overwatch is a AAA game. I guess, I don't know. But yeah, just find a balance is my thing. Don't make it, obviously a company needs to make money, but find a balance where you're also giving the players a proper experience rather than making it all about the money at the expense of the players. And that's a balance that EA isn't willing to achieve because they're too greedy. But so I hope that answers the question. I think there is a way to do it. And I'm not gonna pretend like I'm an expert and say exactly how, but there are games out there where it's more tolerable than others.
Yeah, I think they need to find some kind of balance. Like, I understand that if you need to adjust games for inflation, games are more expensive nowadays. They take longer to make. They require bigger teams, and those are salaries for every person behind the team. So I understand, they want to make more money for a game. But I mean, I've looked at it online, and I think it was like, if you adjust it for inflation, games should cost $70 instead of $60. That's still only a $10 difference. I would happily pay that $10 if that meant no microtransactions.
Honestly, me too. At this point, because it's gotten so bad, so egregious that at this point I'd rather pay the But here's the thing: I feel like that's not even an excuse because they're already charging more than $60 for your games with the special editions, the golden editions, the $60 games that you get. They're like the base version, the absolute most stripped version of the game.
Oh yeah, I think Ubisoft's the worst because for every game they have a gold edition.
Yeah, and when you get that gold edition, you get the season pass, you get a bunch of extra items that might give you an advantage or something or other. So to say that games need to be sold at a higher price, that even to me is not an excuse anymore because they're already doing that to a degree. They're just being less. They don't want to come out and say, guys, we're selling games more expensively. Because then people will be like, oh, what the hell? I'm already paying enough with $60. But if they say, hey, we'll give you the $60 version, but guess what? If you get this edition, you get this and that. You get so many benefits by giving us more money for the game. So they're already doing it. They're just being sneaky about it. They're being less blatant about the fact that they've actually raised the prices of their AAA titles. And on top of that, they have the audacity to include the microtransactions that influence gameplay and all that, and come on and try to pretend like, oh, we need this money and games are so expensive. We are a corporation. We need to survive by making money. Fine, make money, but you can make money without being shitty about it. You can find a balance where it's not all about making all the money. It's about making the money that you need to push the company further and make the next project while keeping the players happy. Like, it's that balance.
Yep, no, that's a good point. So for your final kind of one-word not your one-word answer, but like your one-statement answer for if they could work or not, would you say yes, no, or you never want to see them?
For microtransactions?
Yeah, in AAA games. Do you think they could ever work possibly? Like, what's this one statement answer you'd have? Kind of like your final conclusion on that subject.
God, I don't know. Here's the thing. It's such a one statement answer. I feel like it's almost impossible for this.
You can take more than one sentence, of course.
Let's see.
I think personally that they could work, but I have yet to see one that I really think is acceptable. Like Rocket League for me personally is one I think of that's acceptable, but I hate that the loot box cosmetics are only attainable from loot boxes, not from anything else. Like I hate it when a really cool looking cosmetic item for a character you play as the entire game you can only attain from paying real money. And then not even that, you're not even paying real money just for that one. You're paying money for to have a loot crate to have a possibility of attaining that item.
Let's put it this way. In an ideal world, I'd say no. I don't want them anywhere near my games. I just want a simple, I pay you a set amount, you give me the full game type of relationship and deal. But I've come to accept that microtransactions are not going away ever now because they're kind of standard at this point. So with that in mind, I think there is a way to do it. And I've seen some games do it in a way that you can ignore them. So yeah, if you can find a balance where you're making money and also appealing to the player experience and keeping them in mind, maybe there's a place for them. But from what I've seen over the past couple months, without regulations, these guys just have all the power to do whatever they want with microtransactions. And in that scenario, they're just not, they're just doing whatever the hell they want, and that's just not acceptable, which is why I think the government suddenly talking about it from various countries, it's such an important step, because that'll have them running scared and try to pull it back a little so something like this doesn't happen again. So yes, short answer is ideally no, but being realistic, there is a place if they can find balance between the world of business and the world of the consumers.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that's a very fair statement to make, because we do have to meet the publishers halfway. You have to find that compromise.
Yeah, sure. But they are not willing to meet us halfway, and I think that's the problem. If they can find it in their hearts to do that, then great. But it's not looking like they will until something forces their hands, and I think this latest backlash might be a first step towards that. I hope, at least.
All right, and we're approaching the 50-minute mark, so I guess we can wrap that up there. And I want to say thank you so much, YongYea, for coming on to talk to me and talk to all of us about your thoughts on loot crates and whether or not they could ever work in the industries they are. And as we discussed, their beginning and now where they are here at the present moment and where they might go in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Thanks for asking some great questions. And I probably ramble a lot, as I tend to do.
They were all good thoughts. I appreciate all of them.
Well, that's good to know. But yeah, I'm just one man with one opinion. Obviously, I respect everyone else's points of views, and I'm not gonna judge anyone for how they spend their money. All I can do is provide the information that's out there and share the intentions behind some of these practices, and hope that people look at it and at least know what they're getting into before they make a purchase of a product from the publishers, the greedy publishers. And for some people, Destiny 2 might be worth their time, or Star Wars Battlefront 2 might be worth their time and money. For others, not so much. But I just hope people stay informed. Don't just blindly purchase something because it's Star Wars, or just be on the lookout and watch out for trickery and lies, because there's a lot of that going around lately. But yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope I've provided some insight that hopefully people can use to guide their future purchases.
Yeah, it was all very insightful knowledge, and I think we all appreciate a lot of what you said. And I know probably for any of you that are watching and haven't already seen YongYea's channel, I feel like most people probably have at this point now if you've been following recent gaming news. If you haven't, make sure to check out his channel. He covers all of the recent news in the gaming industry, and he's very much trying to be a voice and force of the consumer versus the evilness and corruption, to put it mildly, of some of the current business practices that are trying to be implemented.
Yeah.
And he's done a very good job at that, and I think that's probably how many of you will know him. If you haven't, make sure to check out his channel. If you guys want to see more of YongYea, make sure to check the description. I'll have his channel posted down there. And if you like this video and you want to see more, make sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you guys on the next Shepard Gaming Video. Kilo Salai.